Hey guys, I'm really excited for today's video because I have been meaning to film this for a very long time and I just haven't gotten around to it. But today I thought I would sit down and show you how I used to do my makeup versus how I do it now. I have seen quite a few people do this challenge before and I really wanted to try it for myself. I know I'm probably a bit late jumping on the bandwagon, but my makeup has definitely changed in the last few years, particularly since I started filming for YouTube. So it'll be very interesting to see how I used to do my makeup. So just a heads up, if you hear any background noise, I apologize. I will try my best to control the elements, but I can only do so much. The window is open in my room because I might implode from the heat. Hopefully it'll be fine, but just in case you hear any screaming children, barking dogs, fighting couples or cars, they're all outside. Okay, let's just get started. I'm gonna do, this side of my face is gonna be the then, and this side of my face is gonna be now. So I'm just gonna show you what I would do at each stage. And yeah, I'm just gonna start putting products on my face. Okay, so I actually don't have many of the products that I used to use, but I do have similar products. So I'm gonna use those for my then side. But the first thing I do is I still prime. So for my then side, I have the Hourglass number 28 primer serum. This is very similar to the Smashbox Photo Finish primer, which is what I used to use. Oh god, I am just translucent. Okay, I'm just gonna pump this straight onto my face, and I used to use a lot of this stuff, like way more than I needed. Oh my god, I feel like I'm literally just putting essential oils all over my face. Okay, I've definitely used, I know I used to use a lot, but I've definitely put way too much on. I'm just gonna wipe this off as I go. Don't mind me. And for my now side, I use a more sticky and dewy primer these days. My favorite at the moment is the NYX Honey Dew Me Up. The only thing I don't like about it is how stringy it is. But I just do a little bit. That's probably way too much. It's also going into my eye. I don't know who let me touch makeup today, but it was definitely not a good idea. Oh my god, it's on my eyelash. Okay, we're good. So I think the next biggest change that I've made to my routine is I do a few things before I put my foundation on my now side. For example, I take the Urban Decay NakedSkin concealer, this is just in the shade pink, and I just dot that under my eye, just 2 dots like that. And then I take my Nars Soft Matte Complete Concealer. This is so old, I really need to get a new one. This is just in the shade Light to Vanilla, and I just take a tiny little bit, and any spots and redness I have, I just lightly go over those. I also like doing it just in the corner of my nose here, and that just helps give me that tiny bit extra coverage. So next, I think one of the biggest changes I've made to my routine is how I do my brows. I use soap brows a lot now, which you probably would know if you have watched any of my previous videos. And I usually do it before my foundation just to make sure it doesn't smudge the foundation underneath. I really need to clean my brushes, but we're not gonna have that conversation right now. And then pat them down. Brows, worms, brows, worms. And finally, just using my finger, I'm gonna blend in these dots under my eyes. So next would be foundation. On the then side, I'm gonna use a mix of my Fenty Beauty Pro Filtr Hydrating Foundation and my e.l.f. Flawless Finish Foundation, because I feel like this has more of the finish of the foundations I used to use. However, I also used to use a lot of foundations that were the complete wrong shade for me. This is shade 140, which is a little bit too yellow and a little bit too tan for me. I can get away with it when I have a tan, but it's still a bit yellow. And I used to use a lot of yellow foundations to kind of counteract the redness in my skin. Whereas now I don't go for yellow foundations, I just go for more neutral foundations, and I tend to match my skin tone a lot better these days. But I'm just gonna mix this on the back of my hand. I'm gonna do 2 pumps of the Fenty, just to make sure I get that dark yellow color. And then I'm gonna do 1 of the e.l.f. And then I would pretty much put it straight onto my brush. And I'd use a big foundation brush like this. And I would just go crazy with this. I would always do this under my eyes. So when I was younger, what I was looking for in foundations were that it was going to make me look tan, it wasn't gonna make me look pink, and that it was gonna stay on my face. But for my now side, I'm gonna use the Urban Decay Hydromaniac foundation. This is in the shade 20, which is a pretty good match for me, and this is very glowy, it's quite medium coverage, but this is my favorite foundation at the moment. But I also tend to use a beauty blender a lot more. Sometimes I'll use a brush to blend it out, but I always go over the top with the beauty blender, whereas I never blended this side out with a sponge, I don't think. And with this, I'm just gonna pump it straight onto my face. and blend that out. Okay, next is concealer. So for the then side, I'm using the YSL Touche Éclat High Cover Radiant Concealer. So this is basically their pen, but rather than being the peachy color correcting shade, it's an actual concealer shade with a little bit more coverage in it. I don't actually like this too much because it's too light coverage for me for under my eyes. But I used to love the pink one when I was younger, so I'm gonna use this today. And I'm going to do the big triangle under my eyes, just like that. And then I would blend this in straight away with a sponge. Basically completely defeating the purpose of the concealer. So for my now side, I'm gonna use my Nars Radiant Creamy Concealer. This is in the shade Vanilla. And I'm gonna take a tiny bit just here and up here. I'm also gonna just go over any spots I have, of which there are quite a lot. Do a little bit more there. Okay, and I'm actually gonna leave that to sit for a little bit and move on to eyebrows. So for my then side, I'm gonna be using a brow pencil. This is the ABH Brow Wiz in the shade Medium Brown. And I'm gonna be using a brow gel. So this isn't actually the one that I used to use. I think this is a lot better than some brow gels I've used because it's very, very sticky. But to be honest, considering I'm probably not ever gonna use a brow gel for any other video than this type of thing, I didn't think there was any point in buying a brow gel that I knew I wasn't gonna use. But yeah, I'm just gonna use a very tiny bit of this just to give this a similar effect to what it would have looked like way back when. What I used to do is I would comb the brows down like so, and then I would kind of draw a bit of a line and start filling in downwards. Can you please stop picking up people talking outside? Thank you. Oh my god. Oh god, I can't stop sneezing. Sorry, as I was saying before the sneezing fit, I would just fill them in down like that, and then I would comb them up. Eventually, I'll get through this video. I would start them quite far in, and I would just sort of draw a line, follow my natural brow shape, just kind of do hair-like strokes. And then the thing that I always did was I rounded out the front. So I would draw sort of hair strokes like this. But that is how I would do my brows. And I liked them being quite rounded at the front because I remember seeing Lucy Hale in Pretty Little Liars, and I just remember seeing her eyebrows and realizing how beautiful they were at that moment, and they were slightly more kind of naturally rounded at the front, so I kind of tried to round my eyebrows off a bit, which I feel like I still do slightly, but definitely not to this extent. And then I would just take the brow gel and I would just run it through my brows. And like I said, this brow gel is a lot better than the ones I would have been using back then, so I'm not going to use very much of it because they would definitely start to droop. For the now side of my face, I now use brow pens more often. Recently I have been veering back towards eyebrow pencils just because they are easier, but just to kind of show you the difference between what my brows can look like when I put some effort in versus how they used to look, I will use a brow pen today. So this is just the Glossier Brow Flick in the shade Brown. Oh god, this is my hard eyebrow. And then sometimes I would leave it like this, but other times I would fill them in with a brow pencil as well. And I think today is one of those times because it didn't come out as good as I wanted it to. So I'm also gonna use the ABH Brow Wiz for this. I just remembered for this side, I forgot, I used to really kind of curve my brows down. I'm just gonna blend in this concealer whilst I'm waiting for my neighbours to finish shouting. So, as you can see, my left eyebrow is clearly a lot, well, for one it's a lot darker, but that's because of the brow pen, but it's also a lot thicker, a lot higher, and a lot straighter. I also added more of a tail to this brow because that's always how I used to do them. It's clearly a lot thinner, it's a lot more curved at the front, and also once this starts to fade throughout the day, you will start to see the lines that I have drawn on with the pencil because the hairs have kind of fallen down. Whereas with the brow soap, they literally stay up all day. But to be honest, most of the time these days, I don't use the brow pen too often because unless you're very careful, it can give this really thick, full, dark effect, which is fine for full glam, but I don't typically tend to do full glam when I'm just walking up the road to Tesco, you know what I mean? Okay, so next for the now side of my face, I'm gonna set under my eyes just before I do my cream bronzer. If I can open it. And I have recently rediscovered my love for the Charlotte Tilbury Airbrush Flawless Finish Powder. So just gonna apply a little bit under my eyes and also to my chin and around my nose and on my head. And I'm actually not going to powder this side of my face because that is not something I used to do. I don't know how my makeup stayed on, but there you go. Next, also on the now side of my face, I'm gonna use a cream bronzer. So I'm just using this Real Techniques brush and I'm just going to kind of dot this on. I do this very, very high up my face now, and I do it all around my head. Like so. And then what I've started doing more recently is using these smaller spectrum sponges to blend out my cream bronzer, just so that way I don't get bronzer on my main beauty sponge and then I kind of drag it all over my face. Also because it's a little bit smaller, it's better for the cheek area. I'm just gonna go over the top of that with my original beauty blender to fade it in. Also, I have decided I don't like using this to apply cream bronzer, it's just a bit too thick. Yeah, look how far down that's come. Okay, I'm just gonna grab a bit more foundation on my sponge and I'm gonna dot that just over the bronzer that's kind of wandered a bit far. Okay, so now I've done my cream bronzer. I'm gonna use my Fenty Beauty setting powder. This is in the shade Butter, and I just use a big fluffy brush and I'm just going to set lightly over the rest of my face. So now for this side of my face, I'm gonna bronze up and I'm gonna use the Benefit Hoola bronzer. This is just the original shade. I only have a mini one. I don't know why. This is freaking me out because I never used to put powder down and I don't know how I blended out bronzer without powder on my face. But we're gonna do it. So I would take a little bit kind of just on the side of this brush and I would do it a lot lower down than I did this bronzer. And I would kind of start, I think, halfway down my ear. And I would just place it here and then sort of just do this. It actually kind of looks nice in person. I'm just gonna use a little bit more. Oh God, that's a bit much. I liked it quite dark by my ear, but I actually didn't use all that much bronzer at all way back when. In fact, this is actually way too much. Just gonna grab my foundation brush and just pat over the top. And that was it. I didn't do any around my head or anything else. It was just... Okay, and for the now side of my face, I do like a bit more bronzer than I used to, and I also do it much higher up, as you can see. So I'm gonna use the Physicians Formula Butter Bronzer. I've just wiped this off. I'm just gonna use the same brush. And I'm just gonna go over the top of where I put the cream bronzer. And I still quite like doing this to kind of get that straight dark line just by the ear. Okay, so I never used blush or highlight back in the day, so I'm just gonna do those on this side of my face now. And for the blush, I'm gonna use the Colourpop X Lizzie McGuire blush in the shade Delish. I absolutely love this shade. It's so nice and pink, but it also has a nice little glow to it. And like I was saying with the foundation, I was really trying to not make my face look pink. So yeah, I just never ever used blush. Okay, and for highlight, I'm in the mood for a slightly stronger highlight. So I'm gonna use Soph's new highlighter with Revolution. This is in the shade Sugar Frosting, and I'm gonna use the one with the S in it. It looks more silver in the pan, but actually on my face, it was pretty gold when I tried it. If you haven't seen my review video, that's actually, as I'm filming this, it's just gone up, but that's the last video on my channel, so go and check that out now. I will also leave a link on the screen if I think of it. And because I do my bronzer so high up, I kind of have to do everything else a lot higher up as well. Since I can't really split my nose in half for this, I'm just going to do it down center as I usually do. Although one thing I always did do was I always did my Cupid's bow. Okay, finally onto eyes. So for the now side, I use a primer, especially because I kind of do some shadow liners and I don't like them to smudge under my eyes. I feel like I'm gonna zoom you in quick. So for my eyes on the then side, I'm actually going to be using the exact palette, the actual shadows that I used back then. I'm not going to tell you how old this palette is, but you can probably tell based on the fact that it is the old Nars packaging, so we're just going to ignore that. This is the shade, I think it's pronounced Isolde or Isolde, I don't know, I'm really sorry if I'm butchering that. I used to think it was called Isolde. I don't know why, but it's this gorgeous bronzy shimmery duo, and to be honest, I still really love these shades. But yeah, I used to use these on my eyes a lot, so I'm gonna use that today. I think I got rid of the brushes that I used to use, so I'm just gonna use some similar ones. I'm gonna use this sort of fluffy flat shader brush, and I'm gonna go into this shade here, the darker one, and I'm just gonna go right into my crease with this and just attempt to blend that in. I'm actually just going to use a big fluffy brush as well, and I'm just going to sort of create a, I don't know, just do a circle here. I used to do this quite a lot and I don't really know why. And this is pretty much what the edge of my eyeshadow would always look like. Okay, and using the same flat shader brush, I'm going to go into the goldeny shade here and just pack that onto my lid. And then using the top of this brush and the darker shade, I'm gonna go under my eye. Nice and thick. That's pretty much it. It's amazing, isn't it? Okay, and for the now side, I'm going to be going back into the Soph X Makeup Revolution palette, the Super Spice palette, and I really wanted to try out some of the more neutral shades, and I thought now would be a great time to kind of, you know, translate this into modern times, so that's what I'm gonna do. Okay, so using a small fluffy brush, I'm gonna use the shade Cookie Dough in my crease. Okay, I'm gonna take an even smaller fluffy brush. This one is a lot more dense, and I'm gonna take the shade Cereal. I'm just gonna use that to start deepening out the outer half of this eye. And just blending with the first brush. Next, I'm gonna take the shade Not Gonna Lie on my finger and apply that to my lid. And I'm just gonna leave the kind of inner third bare. Oh, that is pretty. It's actually very similar to this lid shade. And then I'm gonna take Mirror Ball for that inner third. Okay, I'm not gonna pick up any more product on this dense brush, but I'm just gonna use it to kind of clean up the crease. And now I'm gonna add more of the shade Cereal, that darker brown shade. And I'm just going to, again, deepen up this outer corner. Okay, and I'm actually gonna use the shade Brownies, and again, this kind of dense brush, and I'm gonna use just a little bit through my crease to just kind of deepen it up a little bit more, because I just want that to be a little bit darker. And back into the fluffy brush, no product added, just going to blend. Okay, and I'm gonna take Brownies again on a little angled brush, and I'm gonna use that to do a shadow liner. And I'm actually just gonna take, I recently got these paintbrushes. I don't know if you saw my last video, but I was talking about getting teensy tiny paintbrushes to do more detailed liner work. I'm gonna use this to just do the wing. Oh my God, why did no one tell me to do this a long time ago? This is so much easier. It's so much smaller. If any of you have hooded eyes and you really struggle to do eyeliner like me, get an itty bitty tiny paintbrush this is amazing. Okay, for under the eyes, I'm gonna use that same angled brush, and I'm just gonna take a bit of brownies and kind of just smoke that on. So next up is mascara. For my then eye, I'm gonna use a lash primer because I used to use the MAC lash primer all the time to make sure that my mascara didn't smudge down my face, and I absolutely loved it. But I don't have that anymore, so I'm gonna use the KVD Epic Curl Primer. And then I'm gonna use one of my old favorites. I absolutely used to love this, so I'm gonna be using those on this eye. I will also be curling my lashes because that's something I've always done. And then on this eye, I'm gonna be using my KVD Go Big or Go Home mascara. If you struggle with mascara smudging under your eyes, this mascara is really, really good for that. Also, I'm gonna do my lower lash line with the Falsies mascara, but I'm gonna leave my lower lash line bare for my now side. So I'm quickly just gonna whiz through this. Okay, and finally for lips. So on my then side, I actually did nothing to my lips at all. I really liked how they looked, just kind of pale pink with a little bit of foundation on, and I could never find a lipstick that matched that color perfectly. It always looked a bit too done up with lipstick or anything like that on, so I always left them bare. Whereas nowadays I do tend to overline my lips and use a lipstick or a lip gloss a lot more often. I'm gonna use my two lip liners by Vive in Bark and Velvet Sands. If you watched my video on how I overline my lips and make them bigger, then I'm just basically gonna be using those techniques just on one side of my lips. So I guess we can see how well they really work. And then I'm gonna use the Beauty Bay lip gloss in the shade Ballet. Okay, and to finish, I'm gonna set my face on the now side. Never set my face on the then side, so this will be fun. I'll just use the palette to help. And then I just use a beauty blender. Okay, so these are the two sides of my face. This is then. And this is now. So comment down below and let me know which side you prefer. Let me know if there's anything that surprised you, and also let me know what are things that you have changed in your makeup routine in the last few years. I definitely have a lot more steps in my makeup routine these days. It's not as simple as this side. This would have been my going out face, which I'm quite surprised about because I feel like it took me ages to get ready, even way back then, so I don't know what I was doing. But just looking at it, the eyeshadow is definitely, it's too far down, whereas I feel like I've kind of learned to work with my shape more. I feel like there's still a lot more I can learn, but it's definitely an improvement. Other things, the fact that I didn't set my face kind of freaks me out, although I have to say the bronzer didn't go on as patchy as I was expecting it to. I do think just overall this whole side of my face looks yellow, but it looks kind of almost sickly because it's not my correct skin tone, whereas this side of my face is actually more bronzed and darker than this side because of the bronzing techniques that I used, despite the fact that the foundation itself is actually lighter. So I think that's definitely something that was quite nice to learn, was that I can add color in with bronzer and I don't have to have this sort of darker yellowy foundation that doesn't suit my skin tone. And I definitely think this just looks better on me. I also appreciate a good blush these days and a good highlight. My eyebrows are incredibly different, and I think overall this side looks more lifted, it looks more defined and more structured, whereas this side looks a little bit, kind of a little bit droopier and a little bit less kapowy. I don't know what that was, but that's the only word that came to mind just then. But anyway, I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. It was very fun for me to make. I enjoyed seeing the changes that I've made, and it's quite cool to see it in such stark contrast, just to see the differences over a couple of years, because I think this side is kind of more like 2016-ish, like maybe uni era, and this is obviously now. So I guess there's about 5 years difference. But yeah, if you enjoyed this video, please do give it a thumbs up and I will do more videos like this in the future. And of course, if you haven't yet subscribed and you made it all the way through, I think you enjoyed it. I think, let's not lie to ourselves, you did enjoy the video, and I know you're gonna enjoy some of my other content. It will probably be popping up on the screen now. So go check that out and please subscribe if you haven't already. I would absolutely love to have you on board. And that's it from me really. But thank you so much for watching as always, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!